I'm Hardy Brooklyn.
And I'm Michelle Wild.
Who are you?
And what is your true passion?
We'd like to start off just to shout out to our sponsors that have helped making this possible. Flow Juggle and Rev Up Your Resume. Be sure to check out Flow Juggle's really cool video at the end of this episode, and check the show notes on how to reach out to Rev Up Your Resume and Flow Juggle. So we just want to give a quick recap of what we reviewed the last episode, and basically what we went at was how to figure out what your passion is. And it's to ask yourself some questions and then ask yourself why you ask those questions, and give yourself time to change your mind and to absorb those questions and those answers and the reasoning behind it. So one of the things, we're just going to run through those questions really fast. You know, what comes to your mind first when what is your passion? What is that? Next thing is, what do you like to do? And come up with like 5 things that you like to do. And what do you like to talk about? The same thing. Come up with 5 things you like to talk about. What makes you feel warm? 5 things that make you feel warm. It could be eating chicken soup. And what does doing what you're doing now make you feel?
Okay.
So when you think about those questions and the answers and how you got to those answers, then you're ready to take care of today's episode.
Right. And also the other thing we stressed was about writing all this down.
Yes.
Yep.
All of this needs to be written down.
Yep.
It needs to be documented so you can go back and look at it.
Right.
So that you can use to check off as far as like, this is my passion. This is what I said I wanted to do. And you know what? Maybe you think you're going in the direction of your passion, but a lot of times those steps that you put into place in writing to actually get there, you forget because you get so caught up in something else.
Right.
So it's writing it down, referencing back to it, whether it's every week, every day, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever that reference point is, but make your plan and update it as things change so that you can see where you made the right decisions and where you made the wrong decisions.
Right, right. I also think it's really important to give yourself, once you figure out what your passion is, to give yourself some goals. I think it's important to have your ultimate long-term goal, and then I think it's important to have like maybe yearly, monthly, weekly, and then daily. And then to understand that, you know, that you should never lose sight of your ultimate goal and that things are going to change and shift.
Correct.
Right? And that you have to be open to that and come from a positive space, you know, embrace it and understand that things always happen for a reason.
Right. I mean, I decided to become a life coach. Perfect example. And my goal is I'm going to be able to coach everybody through leaving the constraints of society and being their true self. That was my goal. I was going to help everybody. I was going to make $1 million. And those were going to be my clients. And when I look back at now what my actual clients are not people that are in that situation. My clients are other life coaches that are having to work through issues from their clients. Or I'm working with executives at large companies who are dealing with a job transition, but it's nothing about their passion. It's just about them able to become present where they are.
Right, right. So what happens when you hit an obstacle that you feel like, you know, you can't pass? Like this is like all of a sudden I've hit this wall and it's like there's no way I'm going to be able to get over that.
Well, a lot of that I think comes back from when we're writing it all down,
right,
and when we're making the plan and we're making the goals, because there's never only one way of doing things.
Right.
And when you look at it, like, what is that obstacle? I don't have enough money, I don't have this, I don't have that. Well, you know what? There's always ways around all of that.
Right.
So how do we think about that, and what do we present when it comes to that?
So I have a good obstacle that I had when I made a change a long time ago when I was in my 30s, and I decided to be a photographer, and I actually decided to go back to college and get a degree in photography. And I was doing really well. I was on the honor roll and all that until it came to chemistry. And I completely, utterly freaked out. 2 things. One, because the school that I went to was on trimesters, and chemistry was only taught in the summer every day from like 8 to 11 every morning.
No way.
Yes, for 8 weeks straight,
right.
Okay? First of all, I'm not a morning person, okay? I am not good at math, not even a little am I good at math. And there was definitely no way I was going to be good at chemistry. So when the first day I get into the class and she hands us the periodical table and she's like, okay, you got to, like, know this. And I just completely, utterly freaked out. I mean, I was so freaked out that I actually kind of checked out of my own head. I was like, you know what? I'm thinking in my head, like, you know what? Maybe I won't do photography. Like, that's where my head went first. Like, you know, maybe it isn't really worth it. Like, why do I even need chemistry if I'm going to be a photographer, right? And then I left the class, and I was seriously freaking, and I was seriously thinking of, like, changing my career again. Like, not following my passion because I was so scared of that class. And I have to tell you, I didn't do that well in the class, but I attended every lab, I did every homework, I did every extra assignment thing, and I asked all the questions that I needed to ask. And like I said, I didn't do well at the final. My teacher didn't even tell me my grade. She's like, it was so bad, right? So I probably didn't even get one question right. And I realized that, you know, how I operate is if I get to an obstacle, I always think that I'm not good enough, that I'm not smart enough, I'm not going to be able to do it, and it really was holding me back. And then when I realized that, when I started the class and I started realizing, well, I could do some of this stuff. But the thing is, the teacher in the end, you know, said to me, I saw how much effort you put in. I saw what you did, and she ended up giving me a B+ because she saw that I put effort. And then that sort of validated everything. Like, she saw that I was struggling, and I knew I was struggling, but she knew that I made an effort, right?
Yep.
So I pushed myself. And even though it was real, I mean, I pushed myself every single day because every day I had to go to that class. And I pushed myself every single day for 8 weeks. And I made it through. I made it through. And the feeling I had of making it through, I felt so good and proud of myself.
And that's really why you need to write down all of the steps and everything that you do and everything that you go through, because there are going to be situations where you feel like it's helpless.
Right.
But then if you can go reference back of all the amazing shit you've done,
right,
that makes it so much easier. And it also, if you have a clear map of where you have to go, it takes a lot of that anxiety out of the moment.
Right.
And it's like, well, you know what, maybe I need to like relook at my plan and figure out how I can still get here, because there's just one roadblock I hit.
Right.
And whatever that might be, whether it is I have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to make a class, or whatever it might be. So you really want to think about that you have to validate yourself and don't worry about others validating you.
Right. And I have to also want to say that nothing worthwhile is easy to get. Like, you're gonna have to do some work. It's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be not only challenging to, you know, pursue your passion, but also challenging for yourself, right? And to be, again, one last time, be really compassionate and kind with yourself, and understand that things take time and it's a process.
So a lot of that, when we're looking at it and we've created the steps and we're coming up with the steps, a lot of it is that's where I feel that people need to look to their accountability buddy, they need to look to their counselors, their therapists, their coaches, their mentors, their supporters. Look to those people to help you stay on the track and provide guidance when you get stuck.
Right. I mean, you know, I have an app on my phone. It's a motivational app, and it has all these great quotes that I go through, you know, when I'm feeling a little depressed or down or I'm not motivated. And a lot of the quotes talk about how, like Michael Jordan, he talks about how he completely was a failure. I mean, he was complete failure until he actually got to that point where he became the superstar basketball player that he was, right? Yeah. So every single person, because the failure is part of the process, because it's testing you and how you're going to handle that failure, and that's an important part of following your passion and pursuing it.
And it's not only handling the failure, it's also handling things like the negative reactions you're going to get from people.
Right.
Because as you go on your change and your journey, because this is going to be really a journey of enlightenment.
Yeah.
You're going to look at things so fundamentally, potentially different depending on what type of change or what type of passion change or what the change is. But for a lot of people, once they become passion focused and even a little hedonistic focused, it makes them a lot happier inside and a lot less empty. So the way they look and react with people and interact with people changes significantly. Like, there are people that I really don't want to hang out with anymore that I hung out with on a day-to-day basis because of the way that they talk, the way that they approach society, just in general. And I'm just like, wow.
Because your perception changed.
Correct.
Right.
My perception changed, and their perception of me changed. They're like, oh, you gave up this corporate job making all this money to do this, and are you crazy? And I'm like, well, money isn't everything for me.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what I used to say too. Money isn't everything, but what ends up happening is you trying to find your true value and your true worth, right? Which isn't money.
And the other thing you have to look at is when people say money and things like that, or whatever reason they're giving you, a lot of times it's really rooted in jealousy because they're jealous that you were able to make this change and they're not.
Right.
Or it's more like anger because now you're maybe putting an additional burden on their shoulders potentially or changing their lifestyle.
Right.
And I noticed that that's what happened is when I switched to becoming a life coach and became more in touch with myself and my own personal feelings and emotions, the people that distanced themselves from me were ones that felt that the lifestyle would change of how they interacted with me. Because, the conversations wouldn't be there anymore.
Right.
Because I don't, what? There's no point in me and you fighting about how crazy our president is when we're out at a bar or a concert.
Right.
Because no matter what we say or do, nothing's going to change it.
No.
And why do I want to bring that negative energy?
That is true. But I also like to think, I have a different perspective. I think it's important to talk about it, right? Because then it gets it out, right? That's just my point of view.
But there's also a time and place.
Yeah, there is a time and place, and when you're out socializing, that's not the place.
Correct.
So that goes back to having boundaries, right?
Yep.
So it's really important for you to have boundaries. We're not going to talk about negative stuff while we're out socializing.
Right. And when we look at that and we're going through this process, we're going to need to put boundaries up with people that are in your work life, people that are in your home life, people that are in your social circles, people that you run into in the zoo, whoever it might be, people that are in your new education program or in your new job development situation or even at your new job. We have to set boundaries of how they interact with you and what they should expect from you.
Right. I also have to say, one of my things that I work on is my own boundary and how I react to stuff like that. Because I would have a tendency to really overreact and get all defensive and all that other stuff, which is part of the change of triangle. It mentions that. And I realized that, that's like doing a disservice to myself. And now I'm getting caught up into that negative stuff instead of just stepping away from it.
Correct.
And just be like, okay, just make a mental note that that's the way that person is, and I'm not going to go there.
Correct. So when we take that back and let's say, so now we've got our plan, we've got our journey that we've started on.
Right.
We've got our mentor, we've got our coach, we've got our chaperone that we're doing either our weekly check-ins, daily check-ins, whatever it might be.
Right.
We've got our plan and we're going forward. So now that we've written down all those steps, and let's say the first step is just to tell everybody, that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's the hardest step, is to kind of like communicate your desire to change to your inner family circle and then potentially your inner friend circle.
Okay, so now it also depends on how you present it to them.
Correct.
Are you going to be like, I'm doing this no matter what you guys say, or are you going to sit down and have a conversation about it, a back and forth?
Correct. And that's really important is, I found my true passion and this is what I'm doing, or I found my true passion and I'm going to give it a shot, or let's talk about it.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. Like, I've done some soul searching and I realized that I really want to be happy for myself, because then that's going to, spread out to everybody else that's around me, right? And I'd like you to be supportive, and this is something that I want to do. And this is the steps that I'm going to take, and this is feasible because, look, other people have done it, right?
And we also have to be really conscious when we're coming up and writing up our steps and our goals. One of the things I tell people to make sure they include is how everybody around you is perceiving you.
Right.
And the reason is not necessarily do we care how they're perceiving us, but we want to have the best outcome for success.
Right.
So we want to make sure that our spouses, our partners, and our inner circle are perceiving us in a positive manner, and that it looks like we're going to have a positive goal.
Right.
Not like you're the lazy guy that's just sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Right. So now what happens if they're not supportive? What do you do?
Well, you have to make a decision on whether you want to go down this path.
Right.
Or do you want to continue doing a different path? That's a path decision that you have to make.
Well, it's a big decision if it's somebody that's, suppose it's your husband or wife, and they say, no, if you leave your corporate job, I'm leaving you.
Then you have to make the decision of which path to choose.
Right.
And one of those paths might include not having your spouse with you.
Right. I mean, that's a really tough decision to make. In the end, I think the most important thing is that you have to be happy. I mean, I truly believe that, and that's always been one of my life goals. But it's hard to let something that's comfortable, even though it's negative, to let it go.
Right.
Right.
And a lot of times, people are, because that's what you're used to. Those are the patterns. So when you're going through this, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to go backwards. You need to be compassionate about yourself. You need to give yourself the ability to say, listen, when somebody's kids are learning to walk, they take one step forward, 2 steps back. When you're learning to do different things, your kid might be a great walker today, but not walk again for 3 weeks.
Right.
Or you might have been the greatest car driver in the world, but oops, all of a sudden you have a little different vision, or you fell asleep wrong, or whatever it might be, and now you can't navigate or can't deal with the fact of the amount of cars on the road, whatever it might be. So things change, and
right.
You need to be able to be compassionate to yourself and allow for that time, because you are going to have setbacks. So if you have a long-term, let's say your 1-year goal is to leave my old job, to start this new career, have 1,500 customers, and be doing dinner out once a week with my wife. Let's say that's your goal. There's a lot of things that can happen in that year.
Right.
Let's say there's a pandemic, so you can't really go out to dinner. So how do you retranslate that? Let's say the market has changed, and instead of having 1,500 clients, you have 300 clients. How do you kind of realize that, and where do you check that? Did I do something wrong in marketing? Did I promote the wrong space? Did I not do something? And instead of saying that, saying, what more can I do better? So look at what you did and what worked and didn't work, and then use those decisions to be able to decide when you're going to move forward. So
right.
Whether it's how am I going to communicate to my friends about my new lifestyle? Because it might not just be a job. It could be you're getting into BDSM fetish. It can be that you're getting into cross-dressing. It can be that you're getting into, NASCAR racing, whatever it might be, or motorcycle racing. So whatever it might be, everybody's going to perceive that very differently. And depending on how close you want to keep them and how you want to be perceived, you have to really learn to present it like you're telling your new true story.
Right. I also stress, too, that it's really important to set realistic goals and not really put something so outrageous out there,
Yes.
Yeah, because if you're going to make an unrealistic goal because you have to make money, then it's not going to work.
Right. Definitely when you're looking at goals, you need to look at the goals from the point of view of what can I actually achieve?
Right. Exactly.
What is possible? And whatever you think, so let's say you figure I can get 10 customers in 2 months, cross that out and double it.
Okay.
So 10 customers in 4 months, because you know what? Life's going to get in the way.
Right.
You're transitioning. And we also have a lot of other things going on in the world.
Right. So, and overnight success is not an overnight. It's a gradual thing, that sort of happens. And once you start doing, like you said, those people are going to come into your life. There's going to be opportunities that happen to actually let you pursue that. I think the other important thing, though, is when you're talking to, if it comes down to a decision and you're telling your partner, hey, listen, I want to quit my corporate job, and they start freaking out, like to have an honest discussion with them.
Right.
Why are you freaking out? Is it just because of the money? And then you can give an example. Hey, look, we didn't have any money when we had kids and we managed, right? So you should have an honest, open discussion with them if you really want to stay with them and really make it work out, Yep.
And the same thing with your friends around you. I mean, when I allowed my alternative lifestyle to become more public, there were a lot of people that cut me off. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, how do you do that? How do you do that? And now I look back and I'm like, they won't talk to me in person, but they like every single picture I post on the social medias. So it's really interesting because what is the situation and what's the dynamic? So I have to be passionate about myself and give myself permission to say that the decisions that I'm making are for me and for my best interest. And if they have a problem with it, why they have a problem with it, where it's coming from, that's not something that I care about.
Right.
And it should not affect
well, I don't
my
think
being.
it's not that. Yeah, I don't think it's that you don't care about it. It's just it's not your issue.
Right.
It's not my issue to
That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, it's not my issue to carry. That's your issue. That's something they have to work on themselves, right? And again, and then you have a boundary. If somebody's not going to support me, I don't want them in my life. I mean, that's pretty much how I live. If you're going to say something bad about what I do for like a living, or say anything bad about my friends or my lifestyle, then I don't really want you there.
Right. And that's what people have to, you have to start wanting everybody's approval.
Right.
Which is really hard because when we're going through this process, we're not going to get a lot of people's approval.
Or you might get a ton. You never know.
Correct.
But I think once you start making that process and you start meeting other people that are kind of doing what you're doing and going to help you, you're going to get that positive reinforcement.
Right. And it also depends on which of these changes, what you're actually changing.
Right.
So whether if you're changing a job, everybody at your new job is going to give you positive reinforcement.
Right.
If you're going into the fetish world, the people in the fetish world will give you, it's great to come over to our side and become more open. Or whether it's going out to see concerts, all the people around that, but everybody else is going to be like, oh, I can't believe he goes out 5 nights a week, and that's not a responsible adult thing to do. So really be able to commit to yourself and commit that this is what my passion is.
Right.
And I'm going to get there, and I realize along the way that my life is fundamentally, potentially going to change.
Right. And I'm going to be happier. That's the whole thing. Like, you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror. Are you happy with the person that you see? Right? That's the most important thing. Because then once you're happy, that kind of flows, around you.
So the things that we're in closing, I just want to remind people that when we're doing all of this, you need to be conscious of all of your different emotions. And that's kind of in the change triangle, but you really have to be aware is this something that's happening that's anxious? Am I shamed? Am I guilty?
Right.
Am I avoiding my defense emotions? Fear, anger, sadness, joy, excitement, sexual excitement. So we have to think about that. What are they causing from us?
Right.
And that really, I think, makes it a lot easier to move forward, is if we understand that we're anxious when we do these acts because my mother always needed to make sure that there was an extra half a gallon of milk in the fridge or something like that. So where is that coming from and what's creating it?
Right.
It's really important to understand.
Right.
And am I going to be shamed? Am I going to feel guilty because now I'm not making 6 digits, I'm making 2 digits?
Right.
So we need to be aware of our emotions. We need to commit to ourselves. We need to check in with our plans. And when we're checking in with our plans, we should also check in our emotions, especially if you're working with a mentor, a coach, a counselor, a therapist.
Right. So we want to thank our sponsors again.
Flow Juggle, Martin at Flow Juggle, and Linda at Rev Up Your Resume.
I'm Michelle Wiles.
I am Hardy Brooklyn.
And this is a free and open VCast.
Who are you?
And what is your true passion? So next week we're going to actually have a guest that's going to talk about the process that they took and the goals they took to actually achieve their passion.